A hard concept for people to understand has been you are not responsible for the emotions of others. I really wanted to talk about this today because, for those of you who know, I am also known as the boundaries queen. I did not coin that term myself. One of my coaches actually did. And then a few of my friends, they were like, you truly know boundaries inside and out. And the reason is because I grew up, probably like most of you, where we really learn how to be people pleasers. We grow up in households, let's just say we have, and when I say emotionally immature parents, what I really mean is like, yes, emotionally immature, but I mean they didn't know how to handle their own emotions in a healthy way, let alone your big emotions in a healthy way. And so, what we learned is that anytime we had big emotions, maybe we were punished for it, maybe we were sent away, maybe we were reprimanded in some way verbally, quit your damn bawling, like all these things. And what that teaches a child's mind subconsciously, and if you really think about it, this is where we learn most of what we believe about life is in childhood, but we carry these patterns with us into adulthood. So, what this pattern taught us is my emotions are not important. My emotions make other people uncomfortable. My emotions are bad, whatever it may be. You get the point. So we learn to tuck our emotions in and we learn how to start scanning the room, watch other people to see what their emotions are. We dumb ourselves down, make ourselves smaller so that we don't make anybody else uncomfortable and we don't become too big. And as we grow up and get into adulthood, we realize this was not the healthiest way of being. Yes, it helped us get through our childhood and survive in our homes, but it no longer serves us in adulthood because what this looks like is making sure we invite everyone to the party because so and so is going to be upset. But we are super uncomfortable with, let's just say, the creepy uncle, because I don't know if you play Kids Against Maturity. It's a fun card game, kind of like Cards Against Humanity, but for kids. And one of the cards is the creepy uncle. So let's just say you have a creepy uncle, makes you super uncomfortable. You don't want to invite him to the party, but how do I invite the rest of my family and not the creepy uncle? And you're worried about how the creepy uncle is going to react or how other people are going to react if you don't invite him. Because I think that there's also, this is another thing that I saw a lot of growing up, is that you invite everybody simply because they are family. And I am not the person that is going to tell you that you have to do everything with everybody just because they're family, because we don't want the creepy uncle there. And what this is you will abandon your own needs, your own self, so that creepy uncle doesn't get upset, doesn't feel uncomfortable. And this does not feel good to you. This does not feel good in your body, in your nervous system. It's like you don't want to invite the creepy uncle, but you're so scared about how other people are going to react that you do. And then you tuck all of your needs away again so that you don't ruffle any feathers, you don't make anyone upset, you don't make anyone feel bad. And we don't have to do this anymore. I always tell my kids when they would go up to stay with family, I will say, you hang out with the cousins that you enjoy hanging out with, the cousins that lift you up, the cousins that leave you feeling good. If there are cousins who aren't nice to you or friends who aren't nice to you, don't hang out with them. I am not the mom who is going to tell you that you have to hang out with everybody. Now, are we going to be rude? Of course not. We're going to be kind, but we're going to know where our own limits are at. And that is one thing that I really want my kids to learn growing up because I did not. And I'm betting if you're here listening to this episode, you did not either. And here's the thing, when people get upset by us putting a boundary in place, that relationship was built on us not having any. And I firmly believe, I will die on this hill, that boundaries are the foundation of life. They are the foundation to everything. And a lot of us here in today's age and today's generation, our generation, we weren't modeled healthy boundaries in the home. And so I'm going to share an example. I know I've shared this before on one of another episode, but I want to share it again, what a healthy boundary looks like, because this was my proud mom moment. Boundaries is not something that I have always been good at. Boundaries is something that I started setting a long time ago with my kids, not necessarily realizing they were boundaries, but it was like, okay, if mom's office door is closed, we don't knock, we don't yell, we don't stick our fingers under the door yelling at mom, right? We give mom space because she's working. When the doors are open, you can come ask me anything. I am here with for whatever you need or whatever. And I started teaching that to my kids. And then I'd also have like toys. Let's just say when my kids were a lot younger and I was starting my business, I would have toys that stayed in the office so that they were interesting to my kids, right? Sticker kits, like quiet games, blocks, stuff like that. And then they had the regular toys that were out throughout the house. And they just knew like the office toys stayed in the office and the other toys went out. And this just really helped me get crap done when my kids were little and I didn't have a babysitter at the time to do that. But the thing is, when you don't have boundaries and you are not modeled healthy boundaries, you have no clue how to set them. And so you continue to allow fear to drive the car because you're so afraid of how the other person's going to respond. And you find yourself so uncomfortable in their discomfort that you would rather continue to abandon yourself, to harm yourself. And when I say harm, I mean like emotionally. You're causing yourself more stress than necessary. And so, a healthy boundary that my daughter had set was she got a job at a car wash and she drove my middle child, they drove together to and from school. Well, my middle child had wrestling practice after school. Well, it was during last period. And she wasn't making it out to the car quite as quick as Kenna would have liked her to. And so my oldest looks at her and she says, if you cannot make it out to the car on time, you're going to have to ride the bus. And what Ella took that as is my sister's telling me I have to ride the bus. And so she came to me. So, one, that was a healthy boundary there, right? That was a super healthy boundary. Kenna was not doing that to control her younger sister. She was doing that to protect her own inner peace. If I am not responsible for you, I know that I am going to get to work on time. So then Ella comes to me and says, well, what time will you pick me up every day? And I looked at her and I said, oh no, I will not pick you up. You will ride the bus. So if you cannot get out to the car on time, you can ride the bus home. And it's like, that is such a healthy way to put a boundary in place. And I want you to know that you, as a mom, have the opportunity to say yes or no to your kid for anything that they ask. And I think that as parents, at least for me, when I first started motherhood, I wanted my kids to have this happy childhood, this childhood that I didn't have. I wanted to be the fun mom. I had all these ideas, but I didn't know how to make it happen. And so I started off having no boundaries for the first little while, and I really suffered for that. And my kids also suffered because it's actually really good for them to know where their boundaries are, to know where the lines are, to know what is expected of them and what won't be tolerated. It makes them feel safe. And so when I look back on my motherhood journey, I just want you to know I wasn't great at this when I first started. I was a very emotionally immature mom. Like, if we are being completely honest, I was completely emotionally immature. I was reactive. I yelled a lot. I had a lot of perfectionism. I had a lot of guilt. I had everything that you have maybe experienced in your motherhood journey too. And so I just want you to know that, one, you're not too late. I did not really start understanding and setting healthy boundaries until, gosh, it's probably been like a few years ago. And then about 18 months ago is when I really took it to a whole nother level and really understood it deeply, because I had to go through a lot of work through therapy in how to set boundaries and how to limit my time with certain family members who continue to be harmful to me. And this is what you get to do too. And I do want to talk about, I had somebody drop into my DMs. Is it drop or slide? Slide into my DMs. Anyways, I don't know if you've seen Younger on Paramount, but they kind of joke. They're millennials. She kind of jokes like, it's slide into my DMs. But anyways, I have this mom and she slid into my DMs and she was like, I'm really proud of my husband. We have started setting boundaries with his family. We've realized how unhealthy it is and we've started doing this, but I feel like I really need therapy to know how to deal with them. And what that says to me is that you probably don't need therapy to deal with them. I mean, I prefer to hire a coach, just myself. I am in therapy right now, and I have now dropped down to twice a month. And what I have found is that sometimes therapy is really good to dive back into our past. Coaching is really good to take you into the future. So if you just want like a few differences there, if you're not wanting to dive into your past and you're like, okay, how do I move forward with this boundary that I put in place? Coaching is a really great place to get support for yourself. But so as she said that, I was like, that's really interesting to think about, because a lot of people think saying no or setting a boundary is just so simple. And when you say it out loud, it is super simple. But not only do we have to put the boundary in place, which is, in my opinion, the easy part once you hit that point, because I think there's a lot of steps before that. Like for me, it was like, okay, first of all, I have to be okay knowing that I have this need. And I wasn't feeling super good about that all the time either. I was like, okay, I have needs. It is okay for me to get those needs met. And then you put the boundary in place, which I feel like is probably the simple part. But then you have to uphold the boundary. And if you think about certain people, they're probably going to be like a dog. They've got to test that electric fence a few times to really make sure it's on. And so they're going to do this with your boundaries. Or some family members might just have their own freak out. Like, you don't love me. I can't believe you're doing this. You're being such an ass. Like, whatever it is. And then they start to project onto you, telling you that you're the unhealthy one. And then you start to question, gosh, am I a bitch? That was my biggest fear, was people perceiving me as a bitch. And I've always wanted to be a kind, loving, fun person. And now I just know I am those things. And I love myself. So therefore, if you continue to hurt me, I am going to limit my contact with you. I'm going to put a boundary in place and I'm going to uphold the boundary. And this is where nervous system regulation comes in, because if you start to envision yourself living in a life where you have all these beautiful boundaries in place, and I say that, when I say that, what pops into my head, so maybe this is kind of what you're thinking, is like, we have this whole list in a notebook of all these boundaries we need in place. And yes, you can do it that way if you really want to. But I think that a big thing that helped me was noticing how I was feeling in certain relationships, noticing how I was feeling when my kids would do that thing or my kids wouldn't get this done. And I was like, okay, I need a boundary there. And I'd put a boundary in place and then I would hold the boundary. And it took me quite a bit of time to get to that space. And so I want you to know, like, this isn't just a quick fix. Yes, you could list out all the areas of your life that you want boundaries in. And I think that that's really fun to do. And then we start small. We start by setting one little boundary to help you recognize that you are not responsible for how they respond. You're not responsible for their emotions. If you're anything like me, I used to be the person that would be like, just kidding, just kidding. Let's go back to the way things were. I'll continue to abandon myself and you can continue to do what you're doing, because that felt easier. I didn't say it that way, of course. I'm sure you know that too. But when we really start to put these powerful boundaries in place, and when we recognize we are not responsible for the emotions of others, that is when a whole new world opens up to us. and it gets really fun. And you start to regulate your nervous system around knowing and feeling safe in setting the boundary and allowing other people to have their reactions and their emotions and not trying to go back and fix or pick up the pieces, allowing them to feel what they need to feel and still standing in your power in knowing that the boundary you put in place was the best thing for you. And so, let's just say for our kids, let me give you like a really simple example because I think sometimes our kids are like a little bit easier to set a boundary with, even though they're the ones who are going to test them the most. Um, but when we are getting ready to leave from playing at a friend's house, we all have the kid who's like, I don't want to leave, or I don't want to leave grandma's, or like whatever, right? And they're bawling and they're throwing a fit and they're trying to stay. We can look at them and say, it's okay to be sad. We are leaving anyways. And what that does is that validates the emotion. Like, it's okay that I'm sad right now, but we still need to leave. Mom is still removing me from this house and putting me in the car. I've seen the parents, with the kids under one arm and they're kicking and screaming with their legs hanging out the back. I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me and how many times I've seen that in the parking lot just in the past few weeks. We live like by a coffee shop and they do like dance class and arts and all these certain things there. And so I have seen parents like hauling their kids out under one arm, getting them out to the car, kicking and screaming. And that's really all they need is it's okay to be sad, but we're not going to be mean. It's okay to be sad, but we're leaving anyways. It's okay to be mad, but we don't hit. And so we validate the emotion. We let them know it's okay to feel this. And this is where I draw the line. We don't hit our sister. So I just want you to think about that. And then as your boundaries grow, of course, it's like you get to start to decide different things with family members. And when this person slid into my DMs to ask me, like, how do I even handle them? We don't. We handle ourselves. So that looks like maybe deciding, okay, so for me with a certain family member, it was like, I can only handle about 2 hours of this person. And my husband was willing to sacrifice himself to be the one who's like, oh, we got to go. Because I was too scared to at first. So I was like, okay, my limit is 2 hours. At the 2 hour mark, can you say, hey, we have this thing we need to go? And he was like, yeah, no problem. And then it turned into like me being able to be like, oh, we've got to go. And then it doesn't have to be like this big thing. I think that we build it up to be this big scary thing. And all we need to do is like learn that it's okay to have the need and recognize that it's okay for other people to feel some discomfort and to not like what we just said or the boundary that we just put in place. And we get to sit with that and let them feel and say and do whatever they are going to do. But we are going to continue to uphold the boundary. And every time we do that over and over and over again in different situations, you are telling your nervous system, we are safe to set boundaries. We are safe to protect our own inner peace. We are doing this for us. I am not a bitch. This is something I had to say to myself for a very long time, like years, because I was so scared of being perceived as a bitch. And so scared, in fact, that I would let everybody else walk all over me. I would completely abandon myself for a really long time. And now it feels so good to have released that thought and that belief from my brain and know that I can put powerful boundaries in place. And I am taking care of me. I am taking care of my family. And that is actually what comes first in my life. So knowing where your priorities lie and then creating boundaries that protect your inner peace and provide the best life for your family. That is what this is all about. So, just another reminder, you are not responsible for the emotions of others. So, don't pick those stones back up. You just took them out of your backpack. Do not pick them back up when somebody is throwing a fit or somebody is making comments. You know why you needed that boundary. You know why you put that boundary in place. Their emotions are theirs to handle. The only difference right now is that you've never held them accountable to feeling their own emotions. You've picked it back up for them and told them, never mind, I'll just continue to abandon myself And we're not doing that anymore. That is not the vibe here. The vibe is living the life that you want to live, feeling complete inner peace, and saying no without the guilt. That is the vibe. That is what I help you do. That is what I coach all of the moms that I coach on. And if you are looking to get support in this area of your life and being able to uphold the boundary and have somebody walk through specific circumstances and scenarios and experiences with you, I've got you. I have a 3-month one-to-one coaching package that is incredible. You get a weekly call. We are in Voxer together. I hold your hand through the process. I really give you the support that you need. I am the person that you can come to, and I will tell you that you are not crazy. And I am also the coach that will call you out on your shit. And so, if you really want to shift your life and you really want to become the authority of your life, I am your girl. So, you are not responsible for the emotions of others. I want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you have a friend or someone who would benefit from hearing these words, from knowing that they are not responsible, maybe you drop it as a little hint. I don't know if you do that. I do that with my husband. I'll like send him podcast episodes that I'm like, will you get the message in this? And have him listen to it, have a friend listen to it. If you have a friend that is like frustrating you because they refuse to set boundaries or they complain about something and you're like, oh my gosh, you've got to stop complaining, send them this podcast episode, send them my way. We will help them. Again, people have to be open and willing to receive it. But I do things like that with certain friends. I'll be like, I think you would benefit from this. This is like something that you have been complaining about. Here is your solution. And then they can do with it what they will. But anyways, tag me on stories. Just share it in your stories and tag me. It is so helpful for me to get this podcast out here. I love serving you guys here, and I will talk to you next time.